Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. It's April 5th, 2021. My name is Drew Sukup. On behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's phoenixNAP webcast, Deploying VMware DRaaS Technical Deep Dive, presented by William Bell, the Executive Vice President of Products at phoenixNAP, and Chestin Hay, Senior Cloud Solution Architect at VMware. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You should receive an email with the on-demand link in your inboxes around 1 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Second, if we have time, we're going to have a short Q&A session that will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered into the question and answer section on the side. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation because we love to answer questions as they come in. And some people have already found the question and answer side. So welcome to Nikki, Gilbert, Aram, and Daniel. Additionally, third, there'll be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit this webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All attendees from today's webcast who opted in their information at registration will be entered into a raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Not too bad, right? All attendees who opted in will be contacted directly by phoenixNAP. So good luck. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to all the way from North Carolina. William, I'll turn it over to you now. Make sure you take control.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Really excited to be here. We've got a packed schedule, so I'm going to jump right in. I hope this is going to really meet everyone's expectations in terms of a little education, a little demo, kind of a technical deep dive. There's some good architecture stuff in here, so stay tuned for Chestin's presentation in the middle of this webinar here. He's going to really hit it hard with some technical stuff, so hopefully that works for everybody. All right, so I think most of you on the call probably understand why this is important, but you know, with disaster recovery, we're starting to understand what technology issues and outages can mean for organizations. And it truly means more than ever before, right? In most organizations, even if you're not a technology-focused organization, you truly are at the behest of the availability of your data. And so you have to do everything you can to avoid downtime. Now, does that mean overspend? You know, no, right? Do the same analysis that, you know, at least part of you at least were trained to do around loss expectancy and annual rates of occurrence and all those things. You got to do the data. But if you really dig down and talk to the business about what it would mean if there were a significant IT outage in your organization, I think that having a great disaster recovery plan as part of your business continuity plan can mean the difference between potentially staying in business. And so I think, you know, there's some good data points on the screen here. Everybody, the slides will be available, so don't worry about catching every last data point. It is starting to become a bigger problem, especially as we see people kind of being hit with some of the common ransomware components. There are some ways that DRaaS can help with that. I would stress that having a backup plan in addition to essentially a disaster recovery plan is even more important when it comes to the security side of things. But yes, you know, disaster recovery can really save your life. So speaking towards that specifically, I lost the organization. Here we go. Speaking towards that specifically, you know, what does a backup do? What does some type of disaster recovery, technical disaster recovery implementation do for you, right? When you look at a backup and an offsite backup, yes, it is possibly part of a very rudimentary disaster recovery plan. But when you're leveraging backups for disaster recovery, it can mean significant recovery time objective delays, right? So if you're an organization that has, you know, tens of terabytes, hundreds of terabytes of data, and you're trying to get up in, you know, get back and running in hours, that's just not going to work if you're doing it from a backup. Pretty much the coldest thing you can have. But I would stress that even if you listen to the stuff today and it sounds a little too fancy or too expensive, A, it's probably not as expensive as you think, and B, at minimum, take a copy of your backups and put them somewhere safe, off-site, right? So we're going to dive a little bit through that more as we go. So specifically, the reason that we're going to talk about why cloud-based disaster recovery matters for organizations is that it can actually significantly reduce the cost of ownership of a technology solution like this. Some people love to do everything themselves, and I get that. You know, most of you on the call are probably vSphere administrators. You have robust environments. I understand that doing those things yourself can actually mean it's certain advantages for your organization. What I can say pretty confidently, though, is that duplicating all of that effort to put somewhere and then hope to never use it is probably not a great use of budget, right? And so I like to use an example that I've given before, if you've heard me speak around disaster recovery, but you know, if it's like buying a second car for your family that's identical to your primary car and then parking it down the street and then never using it and hoping that you never use it, but you have it in case something goes wrong. It's just not, it's much better to rent a car or any other option you have to kind of get from point A to point B than to have an identical second car waiting around to use it. So take the advantage of the economies of scale, the cost benefits of cloud-based DR, because you can either share all or part of that expense with other people, right? And I think that that's the other important piece, is that depending on your compliance and security and other types of needs, there may be something that you can't share with others and something that you can, right? Maybe you need a dedicated vSphere cluster in the cloud, but having a dedicated storage array, having dedicated routers and networks and all those things, dedicated colo is not necessary, right? Maybe you just say, look, I don't need anything to be dedicated. I just need some type of compliance. Maybe it's PCI or HIPAA or something like that. All of that can be done in multi-tenant environments today with many, many proof points, tons of backup from Gartner and others that say that this is possible and something that you should be looking at. And then why VMware, right? I think it might be a little bit duh when you see what Chestin has in store for you guys today, but VMware has invested significant time and effort into making a world-class DR software product. And it's somewhat like, for us as a, or what is it, principal cloud service provider with VMware today, it's meant great things for us. And VMware is investing in it because of their VCPP ecosystem and trying to broaden the reach and exposure of this type of product, but also for themselves, right? You know, if you look at VMC on AWS and things like that, they've had to invest in this technology. And so when you look at VCDA where it's at today, it is the simplest, and Chestin's going to show it to you, it is the simplest form of disaster recovery replication that you can consume if you are running a VMware environment. And I truly think at this point, probably as long as the last year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, disaster recovery as a service is truly an everyman product. It used to be something that was very expensive and boutique, and guys like SunGuard and stuff like that dominated that area. But today, and honestly, a lot of this has been helped out by VMware and making, infrastructure agnostic platforms. Today, it is actually available for everybody to really try to take advantage of. So recap real quick. It is the VMware DRaaS that we offer and the VCDA product, VMware native, perfectly suited for the environments that you guys are managing today. As low as a 5-minute RPO, which can really be beneficial for organizations that could stand to lose a lot of money in the event of an issue. It's so easy to deploy. It's literally like clicks of buttons. And from our perspective, we've tried to make it really cost efficient and easy to consume for the user. So when you look at phoenixNAP's approach to VMware DRaaS, it's as simple as the number of VMs you have and the amount of storage that you want to replicate. That's it. our teams can get you a budgetary price in seconds, essentially. So, I think it's definitely worth your while to kind of explore the options that are out there, and see if what Chestin's going to show you could really matter for your organization. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chestin, and he's going to take control and take it from there. Thanks, Chestin.
All right, thanks, William. Thanks everyone for joining and giving me some time today. My original goal and still goal in life is not to bore you with a bunch of slides here. So we're going to go through these slides and hopefully get to an interesting demo for you. So as mentioned earlier, I work with VMware. I primarily focus on our cloud providers that I work with. And so let's dive in and let's talk about some VMware Cloud Director Availability. I know that's a mouthful, so from here on out, we'll just refer to it as VCDA. So what is VCDA? At the core, this is really a combination of what used to be three separate products that VMware has now converged into a single product. So it's a lightweight, very easy, simple to deploy and manage DR solution. So you'll hear me say simple quite often because it really is. As William mentioned, it is probably the simplest product that I've used for protecting the VMware environment. So we primarily use it for onboarding and migrations into VMware Cloud Director based clouds. So for those of you that may not be familiar with it, VMware Cloud Director, that is VMware's multi-tenant cloud experience product that we provide to our service providers to present their end customers with their own sort of either dedicated private cloud, as it were, or a shared multi-tenant cloud. So it's a true cloud experience that we create with that product. And so VCDA is the protection for environments that run on VMware Cloud Director. So as mentioned, we can use it as an onboarding tool into those type of clouds. We can use it as a DRaaS solution, which is what we're focusing on today, for your on-prem VMware environment into a cloud environment. And then also we can protect between various cloud provider clouds that they may have. And so when we talk about some of the value of VMware Cloud Director, once again, it's very simple. Everything that you do can be done right there within the vCenter UI. There's a plugin that's deployed as part of the setup. And so all of the workflows, all the management, everything can be done right there within the same console. If you are a customer of a cloud provider that uses vCloud Director, you can also manage those same workflows and work streams right within the VMware Cloud Director UI as well. This is a very simple thing to deploy. It's a single converged appliance, so it's not many pieces from the end customer side that needs to be managed or deployed. A single appliance that has everything you need to get started. And then also keeping security top of mind. This is a secure product. All traffic is encrypted. There's a secure tunnel connection that is made between your on-prem appliance and the cloud provider's tunnel appliance. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. So moving on, just talking about the UI, very seamless, easy to use, simple and intuitive workflows that can be done within this UI. We also support things such as LDAP and AD, Active Directory, for our authentication into this environment, as well as we mentioned, if you are a customer of a provider that uses Cloud Director, we can also use the authentication that is within Cloud Director to log in as well. Going on to our next slide. So VCDA is all policy and SLA profile driven, and this is done on a per tenant, per organization basis. So what this allows us to do is providers can create sort of a tiered approach, kind of a gold, silver, bronze, to potentially present these profiles to their customers based on the workloads that they want to protect. Another thing these as well as them giving you the ability to create those profiles on the fly for yourself. So if you have a specialized application that needs a 5-minute RPO, you can have that. And so we can do RPO times anywhere from 5 minutes up to 24 hours. And within that, we also keep what we call point in time instances, which are essentially kind of like snapshots. You can look at them that way if you want to kind of compare it to something, but it's not really the same as a snapshot, but it allows us to have multiple instances of a VM for us to recover from. And all of this is granular. So the policies that may be presented to you as an end customer don't have to be the same policies that another end customer has. So we can make it very granular according to whatever needs you might have for your particular application. So moving on, we said it was simple. It really is. And for whatever reason, this slide is not showing the way that it's meant to be shown. But essentially, we can protect a VM within 5 steps. It's as simple as selecting the virtual machine that we want to protect. We select the destination that we want to send it to. In this case, whatever org VDC, virtual data center, that our provider is giving to us. We select whatever SLA profile or policy that is presented to us, and we confirm everything and complete. And our protection will begin, and everything will be synchronized within a matter of minutes, because the way that we do our synchronization, we create these shell VMs as well. And I'll walk through that here in a few slides to kind of go through the step-by-step workflow as to how a protection is actually taking place. So into our restoration process, it's just as simple. I mean, we can restore within 4 simple steps. So here you're seeing where we are selecting our failover, where we're going to failover what VM that we want to recover from. Next, we will select any of our pre-configured policies, simply select what instance that we want to deploy or restore from, and then as simple as completing out our workflow and clicking finish, and then our VM will be restored to us. So moving on to kind of talk about some of the architecture. So as mentioned, Cloud Director is a service provider focused product. So we have 2 models, one which is catered towards our service providers that are providing this service, but we'll focus more so on what it looks like from an end customer perspective. So as an end customer, you have a single OVA deployment. It's very simple. I mean, it may be 5 or 6 clicks that you actually do before you can deploy. So you can deploy this product in minutes, literally. And a part of that deployment is the plugin deployment that you will see within your vCenter UI. So for our provider, there's a few more extra pieces that are deployed just because they have cloud replication managers that are deployed, replicators, and then their tunnel appliance, which is what you as an end customer would pair with to send your replications to their cloud site. So let's take a little closer look at some of the architecture, the features themselves. So from a provider perspective, as mentioned, we have 3 main components. We have our cloud replication manager, which is responsible for giving us our UI, giving us our replication manager that's responsible for making sure that all the workflows are in sync, everything is organized properly. Then we have our replicator that is responsible for the actual, its main job is to ensure that the host-based replication process is starting. So depending on where a VM is, if it's a VM that's on a host that doesn't have that process started, its main job is to make sure that is in line, make sure that starts so that replication can happen. And then our tunnel appliance is what literally all the traffic goes through that tunnel appliance. So its main job is to do the pairing between various sites. It gives us our security as part of that tunnel appliance. And so that's what you will, as an end customer, the provider will be giving you that endpoint address for you to pair to. And so now looking more so at what it looks like from an end customer perspective. So as mentioned, there's a single on-premises appliance that is deployed, and you'll notice that the tunnel aspect and the replicator engine is built into the on-premises appliance. So you don't have to deploy separate appliances for each of those functionalities. They're built into one. And so as part of that, of course, the same functionality lies here. So the replicator is responsible for triggering the host-based replication on our vSphere host. And then our tunnel appliance is used to channel all of our traffic to and from our cloud sites. And of course, once we do our pairing, that's where our vCDA plugin is activated within our vCenter UI. And so finally, just showing a representation of how our tunneling is paired. So from site to site, everything is egressing and ingressing over 443. But between the firewall and the tunnel appliance, there's a port redirection that happens. And so we reverse tunnel is created over port 8048. And so once that happens, the registration is complete. The vCenter is able to communicate with the plugin, and then we can start managing all of our replication tasks securely across the tunnel within our vCenter UI. So how does all of this work? I mean, we talked about some of this architecture, but what does it really look like when we actually put this into play? So we're going to just walk through a quick scenario of how everything would look. Kind of skip to step 2 here. So step 1 is really just a representation of our cloud site. So on our left side would be the end customer, our on-premises location, and on the right side would be our cloud provider and their environment. So first things first, we would pair between the two sites. And so from our on-premises appliance, as mentioned, we would get that service endpoint address from our provider. That would allow us to make that secure connection between our org that they would give us. They would give us our organization BDC, as well as our org admin credentials that we need to authenticate to that tunnel appliance. Next, what would happen is when we begin to select our virtual machines to do our replication. So what's happening on the back end is that the tenant brings up that plugin, they select the virtual machine that they want to deploy, and at that point, the replicator engine is correlating where those VMs reside. They know what host that those VMs reside on, and so at that point, it kicks off the host-based replication process. And so then our initial synchronization begins to happen between our on-premises site and the cloud site. And so, like I mentioned, it's very, very simple. All this happens in the background without your noticing. And when we create that first replication, on our cloud site, what's happening is a shell VM is being created. So we are replicating at a block level, but if you were to start that replication, you don't see those VMs right away. So even if you log into that cloud site, you don't necessarily see a representation of that VM. That only comes online when there's a failover or actual failover testing that occurs. At that point, we will see those VMs come online. We'll see the VM get registered into inventory, and we'll actually see a virtual machine that we can interact with. But once that the synchronization traffic begins, the replicator sends that traffic over 443 over to our tunnel appliance. The tunnel appliance receives that traffic and begins to communicate back to its replicator to know where the destination is supposed to sit for the data. So it's able to, based on the policies that it was given, based on what you configured it to be, it's able to place the data on that data store. It's able to understand what networks the VMs need to come up on. And that's all part of the cloud manager's role as well, to help kind of synchronize and keep up with all of that information. So, okay, here we go. This is where I wanted to get to. So as part of that, as mentioned, we have our RPOs in place. So anywhere from 5 minutes to 24 hours, based on our settings, what will happen is the on-prem appliance would check our VMs to see what blocks have changed during that time. Anything that's changed between our last RPO point, we will begin to replicate those blocks. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we have these point-in-time instances that are saved at the cloud site. So, depending on our policy, we can have up to 24 of these point-in-time instances where, so over a 5 minute time, we can have 24 of these various point in times that we can restore from a particular VM. And so that's what we're doing as far as this replication goes. We're doing block level changes. Anything that changes in that 5 minute RPO, we replicate those changes over. So enough of the slideware. I did my best to try to get through that, to make that as painless as possible for everyone listening in. So why don't we go ahead and look at a demo. This is a pre-recorded demo. And so what I'd like you to do is, as you see things that you may have questions about, I'll be monitoring the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them there, and I'll answer them as they come through. So I hope you enjoy this portion of it. Let's kick off the demo here. Okay, so here's a look at our lab environment, just an overall view. So we have two vCenters here. VCSA 01 is our on-prem location, and VCSA 01B will serve as our cloud provider that we will be replicating to. So that'll be our DR site, and 01A will be our on-prem site. So the first thing we want to do is head over to our plugin, and the first thing you'll notice is that we're not paired with anything at the moment. So that's the first thing that we're going to do here. So let's click pair now. Let's give it a name here. We'll just call it on-prem. From here, this is auto-populated. This is just our lookup service address, an administrator of our SSO domain, and our password. Click next. And so this service endpoint address, this is what your provider will either set up for you or provide you with in order for you to set up the connection between your on-prem appliance and their tunnel appliance. So these credentials here is something that they'll have to supply to you as well. So this would be your org admin as part of your virtual data center that you would have in their VMware Cloud Director environment. So we sign in with those credentials, and then this allow access from the cloud. What this is going to allow us to do is, as mentioned, this product, you can work with it within the vCenter UI, but you can also manage it from VMware Cloud Director, the UI within there. And so allowing access from the cloud is going to do just that. It's going to allow us to create replications, manage things in the same manner in which we would here on our on-prem side. So we'll click next. We're going to accept the certificate here. And then now we're ready to finish. But before we finish, we're going to go ahead and configure our placement for this replication. This can be done after the fact, but let's just take care of it now. So as mentioned, this is our on-prem, and so we're replicating to here. So let's just select our region B data center. We want to replicate to our compute cluster. Click next. And then we want to make sure that whatever network we want the VMs to come up on is selected here. So we'll select our VM network for our compute cluster. Also, selecting our storage that we need for our replicated disk to go to. Click next. And now we're finished here. So, all right. So we see now that our site is paired. Our on-prem site is paired with Site B. Site B is our provider cloud, our DR cloud. And so not much to see here at the moment because we don't have any replications going, but let's go ahead and get right into that. So over into the ongoing replications, we have a couple of options here. So we can do a new protection, which will set up a new replication, or we can do a new migration, which is just what it sounds like. It's a one-way kind of migration to a cloud. So this is what you would use if you were onboarding yourself into a provider's VCD cloud. And so this will allow you to onboard your VM. But for this demo, for now, we're going to set up a replication because this is going to be kind of a DRaaS solution. So here what we're doing is just signing in to our, using our tenant credentials, our tenant admin. All right, and so now we see a populated view of our virtual machines. And so straight from the beginning, you notice at the top here, if you had multiple VMs that made up an application, you can group those VMs as a single vApp so that they will all be replicated together. But for this demo, let's just select this core A VM and we're going to replicate it. So now we would select our org VDC that is assigned to us. So in this case, we have our tenant 1 VDC. We have our storage policy that's assigned to us. And so we'll just click next here. Now for our SLA policies, these are generally where our providers tend to create a tiered approach. So we have like gold, silver, bronze, SLA policies. And this is where we map our things like our RPOs, how many instances that we will keep of a particular VM's replication. So a point in time instance, not to be confused with a snapshot, but I guess if you just wanted to compare it to something, that's kind of what you can compare it to. So these can be pre-populated by a provider, but in this case, they can also allow you to create your own policy on the fly. So that's what we'll do here. So we'll just create a 2-hour RPO time here. We can also set our synchronization time to start not right away, but at a set time that we wanted to do it. So if we want to kick off a replication after business hours, we can start that automatically then. Also, we have the ability to replicate only specific disks of a virtual machine. So if we only want to replicate the data disk and not the other disks, we can do so. Also, we have the ability to seed from a VM. So if we have a copy of a VM at the other side already, we can use that to kind of help reduce the time that it would take for our replication to come in sync. But for this demo purpose, we won't do that. We'll just create this as a fresh replication. So we'll just click finish here. And now we see our replication beginning to configure. And we'll just give it a moment here and wait for that status to show that it's fully protected and healthy. All right, so now we see that our replication status is showing healthy. We have a replication type of a protection and everything here is good. So the first thing that we want to do is we have our replication settings. We know what compute cluster we're going to land on. We know our storage, but we defined our networks, but we can also take that a step further. So we have the ability to set our networks depending on what type of activity we're doing. So we can set a specific network when we are doing a migration and a failover that can be different from when we are just wanting to test the VM, do a test failover. So that's what we'll do now here. And notice that if this virtual machine had multiple NICs, we could select different networks, one for each NIC. In this case, we only have one, and so we'll just select, since this is a migration and failover network, we want this to land on one of our routed networks. And then for our test failover, we'll want that to go on a test network, and so we'll select that here. So we'll just apply that. And so now what we'll do is, so we have these different icons up here. Of course, we saw our new protection, our migration, but now we have a couple of additional ones that have popped up since we started. We have a migration, we have our failover, and then we have our test failover. So let's do a test failover and just kind of show you what happens when we do that. So let's click that. We want this VM to power on when we do the test failover. And since we already set our networks in our network settings, we can just use the pre-configured network settings for this. So let's click next. So here, if we had multiple point-in-time instances, we could very well select which instance we want to do a test failover of. But since we only have one, let's just leave it on our default setting here. Click next, and then let's click finished. And so what I want to do is I want to take you over to the actual cloud environment and show you what's going on. So we'll just log into our Cloud Director instance for this particular tenant. This tenant has a couple of virtual machines now. So we see that this virtual machine is coming online here on our cloud side. But I want you to notice something. So even though we are doing this test failover, the source VM is undisturbed. So this is a non-disruptive process when we do this test failover. So you can do this at any point during the day. We won't have any effect on our source VM. But if we hop back over here, we'll just give this a moment to come up, and then we'll check to make sure that it comes online. All right, so it looks like it has powered up. Now we see, because we're doing a test failover, it's connected to our test network. And then let's just pop into the console just to make sure that the VM actually came online. And so we see that here it is online now. And we hop back over into our DR console. But before we do that, I just want to show you, because this is a test failover, you don't see that VM here. You see it here within our org VDC for that particular side. So we see they're basically two separate instances of each other. But let's hop back over into our DR plugin. So now we see we have this ongoing replication. We see our status is showing that our test image is ready. And so, of course, we checked and we saw that that image came online. And so, as mentioned, this is non-disruptive. So once we're finished our test, we can come back in here and simply do a test cleanup. And that will get rid of that VM at the test location. It will continue the replication as, you know, from where we left off originally. So let's just give this a moment, let this test cleanup finish, and then we will move on and do an actual real failover to kind of show you what that looks like. Okay, so that test cleanup just well. We see we didn't have to do anything. The protection reconfigured itself. All the replication is going. If we look back in our cloud environment, that test VM is no longer there. It's the original Photon VM that was there. So let's hop back over into our plugin. And this time, instead of doing a test failover, we're going to do a true failover. So once again, here, if we had multiple point-in-time instances, we could consolidate those into one during this, as part of this failover. We do want to power the VM on. And of course, we've already pre-configured our network settings. So let's just click next. Of course, same thing goes here. We have our one instance. Click next, and then let's click finish to begin our failover. So while that's configuring, I want to hop back over into our cluster and just show you when this failover occurs. The thought behind a failover is that the on-prem site has lost connectivity, and so we won't signal for this VM to turn off. So we look at it as this site is down. We've done a failover, and so we won't issue a power down for this VM. So this will be just coming online as that VM last replicated. Its last point in time instance will come online here on our DR site. And so let's hop over to our DR site now. We see that our failover has completed. Of course, since we had a separate network for our failover network, it connected to it. And let's just check to make sure that the VM has come online, and it has. So simple enough, right? And because this is a cloud environment and we did allow that cloud access, we are able to come in here within the VMware Cloud Director UI and actually see the replication that is going on. So we see our incoming replication here, incoming replication from on-prem. We see the same UI, the same look and feel as we do in our vCenter plugin. So here, and we see that our recovery state has switched to failover. So now let's take this a step further. So we've done a test failover, we've done a true actual failover, but now let's say that we want to migrate the VM back to our on-prem. Our on-prem environment is back online. We want to bring it back to its source location. And so now we want to issue a migration from our cloud environment back into our on-prem. And so we notice here, since this VM has failed over, we can actually do a reverse protect. And what they'll do is it will begin to replicate the traffic so that we can recover back to our source environment. So let's do our reverse replication. And that will issue a, once that gets in sync, then we'll be able to actually migrate our VM back. And so the first thing you probably notice is, wait a minute, this replication just disappeared on me. What happened? Well, because now we've changed directions, this replication is no longer an outgoing replication. It is now moved into an incoming replication. And so now we see our virtual machine recovery state is set to reverse. We are protected. That's how we know that this VM is in sync. If we come over here to our vCenter, we notice now that that core A VM is no longer here. That's because we migrated it. We failed over to site A. And when we issued our reverse protection, it removed that VM and began to replicate the state of it from our DR site. So now we are replicating back to our on-prem, and since things are in sync, we come over here to our incoming replication, and we want to migrate this back to our on-prem site. So hit migrate, we'll click next, finish, and we'll give that a moment to migrate back over to our on-prem site. See, our synchronization is kicking off. And because this is a small VM, this shouldn't take very long. And so again, just wanted to show what's going on in our actual cloud environment. We see that this VM did have this symbol of being protected. That lets us know when our VM is being protected by Cloud Director Availability. But now we're getting ready to move this VM back to on-prem. So it's going through the process now of powering this VM off, synchronizing everything back to our on-prem site, and getting ready to move it and let it become the source back to on-prem. Okay, and so now we see that our replication, our migration, I should say, our migration has completed. We see the recovery state is showing failed over, so failed over from cloud site to on-prem site. And so now, because we do want to begin protecting this VM back to our DR location, we can come in here and do a reprotect. So this will do just what it says. It will begin to set up our reprotection, replicating our data back to our cloud environment. So let's just click reverse here and allow that a moment to sync. And if you give it a second, you'll notice it will switch from a incoming replication and move itself to being an outgoing replication again. So let's just give this a moment. And there we go, it moved over. So here we go. So our VM once again is back into a protected state. If we go to our cloud environment, of course, that VM is no longer there because now it's sitting back at our on-prem location and we're replicating here to our cloud environment. If we hop back over into our vCenter, we'll notice that that virtual machine has appeared back on the on-prem side. And you'll see this little extension here. That's part of what vCloud Director does as its way to kind of keep up with the virtual machines. It'll apply a little bit of a tag to it, that little extension there. And this is random. This changes with each VM. You'll notice this one has a different one. So, but case in point is that the virtual machine now is sitting back at our on-prem location. So, I mean, it really is that simple. So today what we've done, we've demonstrated and shown how simple it is to pair with the cloud site from right from our vCenter UI. We could do everything from our vCenter. So we demonstrated a test failover, a true failover. We migrated back from our cloud environment back to our on-prem, and then simply reprotected back to our cloud site. And once again, everything that we did here in our vCenter UI, if you are a customer of a provider that has a Cloud Director instance and you have a org VDC within that, you can do all of this straight from the VMware Cloud Director UI as well. So all of it looks the same, look and feel is the same, just as if we were replicating and doing everything within our vCenter. So I hope you got a chance to see just how simple this product is, but yet how powerful it is and what it can do. So thanks for tuning in and giving me the time to walk you through this short demo of VMware Cloud Director Availability. And also I want to mention So this lab environment that I'm working in, this is actually available. If you want to get your hands dirty and play with this lab, you can actually play with this exact lab at labs.hol.vmware.com. If you search for lab number 2182, this is the lab that will pop up, and you can start from scratch and create the connection to our cloud environment. You get to, this is your sandbox. It's a true sandbox that you can play in and really test the product and put it through its paces. So feel free to create a free account and go in there and play with this product. It's a very cool and powerful product to use. So thanks. I just want to mention that. I hope everyone gained some value from this today.
All right, Chestin, thank you so much for everything and walking us through that demo. It was powerful, showed how easy it is to use. And I'll mention on top of that, from a phoenixNAP perspective, if you're looking to try to understand, whether or not it would work well from your environment to our environment, we'll set you up with the same thing, POC. You guys can give it a try and see how it works. So I'm going to wrap it up real quick, do a couple outro slides here. And specifically, when you look at it, all of the VMware-based solutions that phoenixNAP offers today, we've been doing this for a really long time, right? If you look at the history of the Cloud Provider Program, phoenixNAP is one of the first 6 providers post the finishing up of the vCloud Express program, which is kind of the predecessor to that. From a disaster recovery as a service perspective, Gartner basically recognizes us in their they killed their Magic Quadrant, but now they have a market guide for disaster recovery. We're featured in there alongside a few other organizations, and VMware DRaaS is a sizable portion of this delivery from a phoenixNAP perspective. So I think that's all good from a validation perspective. Lastly, if you aren't familiar with us, we are a global infrastructure as a service company. We're not a managed services company. We focus specifically on delivering comprehensive infrastructure platform worldwide, right? Keeping you guys that are on the phone in charge of the things that you want to be in charge of and letting you offload the things that you don't want to be in charge of, right? Without trying to take over your environment. Like I said, we're not an MSP. We're not going to come in and just take over everything. Our people are not empowered to do that. We support the infrastructure. We provide that cloud-based infrastructure solution, and we do it specifically in the VMware ecosystem as a kind of like similar to a public cloud, but with the VMware technologies at the center of our cloud delivery. We also have a ton of other non-VMware specific things. For those of you that are looking to get access to Iron, we just launched a brand new bare metal cloud product that is going to have some really cool integrations with VMware in the future, but today is focused specifically on bare metal and things that you can do with that from a cloud delivery perspective. Locations all over the globe, pretty much you can get something somewhere depending on where you're at from a locational perspective. All right, I'm going to launch a quick poll. Our marketing people make us do this, so throw it in there. If you want somebody to reach out, please go ahead, click the sure, I'd like to talk to somebody. If not, no big deal. We're here to educate. We're here to keep this exciting for everyone. We know that this is specifically a very key part of a lot of people's day now during the pandemic. Webinars are one of the only ways that you're getting information. So we try to make this very, very, very useful from a technology, from a delivery perspective, and from a solution perspective. There were a couple of questions. I'm going to jump over to a Q&A real quick here. And the first question somebody asked, are there going to be copies of the webcast? Absolutely. There'll be a copy of the webcast sent out, so you'll be able to get that. There were some conversations about prioritization of VMs and whether you could, determine kind of like startup order and things like that. Certainly, absolutely, you can do that. You can build replication groups and kind of startups inside those replication groups. There was another question around the state of connectivity and functionality for a VM during a non-disaster migration. So the way that works is nothing happens until the cut over is kind of requested, right? So it's going to be kind of a one-way trip, continuous replication, and then a cut. And until that cutover is actually executed, that VM is online and healthy and ready to go. There was a question around the Datrium product. Chestin, do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I was actually typing the answer, but since we're doing it live, let's just do that. So the Datrium product is specifically for like VM protection to like a VMC on AWS environment or between VMC instances. Cloud Director Availability is specifically for protection between VMware Cloud Director clouds, and also coming from your on-prem into one of those type of clouds. We also released what we call Cloud Director Service, which is essentially VMware Cloud Director running on top of VMC on AWS. So allowing a single VMC instance to be multi-tenant. And with that, we're also creating a version of VCDA that will coincide with that. So you will be able to replicate from your on-prem VCD environment into like a VMC on AWS or Cloud Director Service environment. So they are slightly different, but yet there are some overlaps.
I think other things I'll throw out there. The Datrium guys have done a really great job in terms of building a product set. We've had a lot of conversations with them over the years about kind of what they're doing. There are some differences in the RTO, RPO positions of each product that really would need to be investigated more deeply as you're looking at that. The other thing I would mention is that as he talked about VMC on AWS being the target of the Datrium product, for those of you on the call, it's an interesting thing. We work with VMware a lot on VMC in terms of like trying to help our customers get to locations that we might not offer. But ultimately, what we see the majority of the time is that the cost of adopting VMC, especially the startup cost, if you've got 30, 40, 50 VMs that you want to protect, right? There is going to be a significant startup cost of that production cluster that would not exist, not just with phoenixNAP, but pretty much any of the other VCPP providers out there, right? When you're talking about tens, maybe 100 terabytes, even when you get to those scales, the solutions from the VCPP program and partners out there really start to become positioned differently as well as kind of single tenant private clouds, as a service, which then you can do all kinds of different replication, including a lot of other VMware replication kind of services and products that have been out there. It is interesting. Another person asked whether the solution is storage agnostic. They said one of their on-prem solutions is nimble. Do different storage solutions require different tricks? The answer to that is absolutely not. This all happens at the VMware level. For the person that asked that, from a pNAP perspective, we are also running nimble, so it wouldn't matter if it did. but yeah, so I think that's a really great answer. This is completely storage agnostic. There are, I think, Chestin, there are some advantages in some platforms from a replication perspective, but even that I think is minimal.
I was going to mention it. I know earlier someone asked about similarities with SRM. I know with SRM we have replication adapters per vendor and things like that. VCDA doesn't require any HBA, special HBA or special replication adapters for it to work. It's like mentioned in the presentation, the goal of this product was make it as simple as possible. So yes, storage is agnostic. It doesn't matter what the underlying storage is. If vSphere supports it, we support it with VCDA.
The last thing I'll mention really quick, guys, and we're going to wrap it up, is for those of you that are looking at disaster recovery in the cloud, one of the main things that pNAP prides itself on is the ability to do tests, multiple tests per year. and to run in a failover state for up to 7 days with no charges. So we're really looking at trying to make this simple for everyone. I know that Drew mentioned a $100 gift card. We'll get that information out to the winner. Post this. Drew, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, William and Chestin, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. Check out your email about 1 p.m. Central tomorrow. To find out more about the VMUG Webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit this webcast and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.